for all verified facts. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and click the bell icon to get the latest updates.
Hello and welcome. 4 whole months have passed since India entered its lockdown. The anxiety levels continue to rise as fears switch between the likelihood of contracting COVID-19 to insecurity at work to difficult domestic environments, which compound all of the above. The Bangalore-based National Institute for Mental Health and Neurosciences, NIMHANS, has received 350,000 calls on its 24/7 helpline since March, when it opened that helpline. But COVID-19 has highlighted the larger problem of mental health. Bollywood star Amitabh Bachchan referred to mental health challenges faced by the extreme isolation of COVID-19 patients in hospitals. He talked about them because patients do not see anyone but hospital staff, and that too only wearing personal protective equipment. So how is all of this affecting the mental health of young and old in this country, and what could happen going forward? And more importantly, and most importantly, what can we do? To discuss this, I'm joined by Dr. Soumitra Pathare, Director and Psychiatrist of the Center for Mental Health Law and Policy. He also helped write the Mental Health Care Act 2017. Dr. Pathare, thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks for asking me to join you. Pleased to be here.
Right. So tell us, how do you, I know the problem has got exacerbated, but is there some good news in this, in as much as now people recognize, thanks to COVID, the problem of mental health, in as much as it's become something far more stark and frontal than it was before?
I think so. I mean, it's a terrible thing that we have to say this, that it required a tragedy and a pandemic for us to realize the whole issue of mental health. So, while one is very happy that mental health is now seems to be on the agenda, and you see that everywhere. You've got government ministers talking about it. You have the health secretary, the Union Health Secretary, writing a article in a broadsheet about the whole mental health challenges. Now that I don't remember reading anything like that before. So clearly, it is on everyone's agenda. You've seen, as you mentioned, Amitabh Bachchan talk about mental health issues. It's all over social media. So in many ways, yes, it's a great thing that mental health is now getting the attention it needs, but it required a tragedy of this kind. And secondly, I also am not very sure that once the pandemic ends, whether the attention will remain as it is currently. It might just kind of again go back to where we were. And the second thing is, while we've been talking about mental health, we haven't really done a lot about it. So, while there is a lot of interest, there's not been much happening on the ground.
Right. So what are you seeing today in terms of people presenting with symptoms or conditions that to you are perhaps the biggest signs of what's going wrong?
I think you have to look at it from different groups. It's not the same thing for everybody. So for people who have a mental health problem, who have an existing mental health problem, are on treatment, what you're seeing there is people are experiencing relapses. There are times when people who have got better in the past, let's say, I've seen quite a few patients now who I hadn't seen for 2 years or 3 years because they'd got well, they were off their medicine, they were getting on with life, and they're back again saying, look, I'm feeling depressed again, or I'm feeling anxious, or my obsessive symptoms have got worse. So that's one group of people who it is hitting quite hard, which is people who have a history of mental health problems and are now either experiencing a recurrence or a relapse of their existing illness. That's one group of people. Then there's another group of people which I think it's hitting hard, but who probably are not in the system yet, are adolescents, young people at school and colleges. Who it is definitely hitting hard, but they are still not, they probably are not seeing in the system. And the third group, which I think is really hit hard again, is the elderly, and that's largely to do with the social isolation. And again, the elderly population is such that they may not actually seek help. What you're seeing a lot of the noise from, and the ones who are talking the most about it and turning up everywhere, are actually the people who never had a mental health problem, who didn't expect to have a mental health problem, and who are now experiencing some kind of mental distress. Either because they are in a lockdown, they have no social contact, or they're worried about their jobs. And that's the group which I think is the one which everyone talks about when they say, oh, people are having mental health problems. I mean, it's the group which normally. It's the kind of people like you and me who normally don't expect to have a mental health problem and are shocked with themselves that they are actually experiencing some mental distress. So that's the group which I think everyone talks about. But the real worrisome groups for me are the people with existing mental illness, young people, especially adolescents and college-going people, and the elderly who are not appearing on the scene,
Right.
and that's the real worry.
So how do I know, like for instance, suppose I had a headache or I had fever, then I know how to interpret those symptoms in as much as something is wrong with me. I need to either take medicine, go to my physician. How do I then know if I have or likely have a mental health issue?
Well, I mean, I'm not going to give you a whole recitation of all the symptoms that happen because mental health is like a group of conditions rather
Right.
than one condition. So when you say, "Oh, I have a mental health problem," that's not the same as saying I have tuberculosis or malaria. It's a bit like saying I might have a infectious disease. That's the equivalent of it, rather than saying it's a malaria or a tuberculosis. So one of the best ways that people ask this question frequently. I tell people, if you notice any change in your daily routines, if you notice any change in your biofunctions, your sleep is affected, you're not able to sleep, or you're waking up too early in the morning, or your sleep is very poor quality, and if that is happening consistently for many days, not the odd one day, we all have the odd one day when it doesn't happen. But if your sleep is affected, if your appetite or food is affected, you don't feel hungry or you feel excessively hungry, it can go in either direction. And any change in behavior, any change in behavior which is beyond the ordinary. So ask your friends, ask your relatives, ask your partner, whoever is with you, say if they notice that there are changes in your behavior which are beyond ordinary, you're becoming too irritable or you're becoming too withdrawn, or your appetite's changed, your sleep has changed. Now, these are the kind of things that you want to notice. And the change needs to be significant. You're not looking for minor changes. So like, oh, I didn't sleep one night does not really qualify for a mental health problem. Or I didn't sleep for 2-3 nights in a row still wouldn't qualify. I mean, most of us clinicians would say if it's happening consistently for a week, 10 days, 15 days, then yes, I think you've got an issue which you need help for. So that's
Right.
broad stuff. I don't want to give you a listing of symptoms because they'll be very different for different things.
Right, fair enough. Now, what's the onset like? I mean, again, speaking as a psychiatrist, as a doctor, how do you assess something that's set in versus maybe early signs versus obviously advanced stages?
Well, it depends which illness you're talking about. So each of the illnesses that we talk about, I'll use a couple of illnesses as examples, okay, so that it kind of gives you an idea. Depression. Let's take depression because everyone talks about depression. The problem is that the word depression has become a much abused term. It has a certain meaning in the colloquial sense, but it also has a certain meaning in the clinical sense. And when we talk about it clinically, which means when doctors are talking about depression, they mean certain symptoms, they mean certain things happening. And there is a proper, it's not just based on my whim and fancy that I think, oh, I think you're depressed. That's not how it works. There's something called as the International Classification of Diseases, which is published by the World Health Organization, which has a list of all the criteria that you need to meet to say, oh, you have this condition. And that's true not just for depression, that's true for diabetes, and that's true for hypertension. So basically, for depression, for example, the doctor will look at all those symptoms that are listed as you need to have, say, 5 out of these 9 symptoms, ask you questions around those symptoms. And if you do meet all of those criteria, then make a diagnosis that you have a clinical depression. And similarly for other illnesses like, say, schizophrenia, again, that has a list of symptoms that you should have and signs that you should have. If you meet those criteria, then the doctor will say you have that diagnosis. So it is variable. What I would say to people is don't get into self-diagnosis. There's a lot of, what I find these days is a lot of Google diagnosis. So, if people come to you and you say, okay, tell me what's wrong. And they say, I think I've got an obsessive compulsive disorder. You say, no, I don't want to know what disorder you got. Tell me what's your problem. And that because they've gone to Google and checked and they've arrived at their own diagnosis. And so they think they're helping you, but actually sometimes it doesn't help.
So going by the cases, and let me link that to COVID as well. So what's the disease that you're seeing more of nowadays?
Like I said, I think the bit that you're seeing a lot more of is anxiety and depression. Clearly, that's gone up. And anxiety, you see, anxiety is a unusual thing. Anxiety is a normal state. Okay, so all anxiety is not abnormal. I mean, if you got a tiger in front of you, you better feel anxious because that's how you're designed to be. Uh, so certain amount of anxiety is obviously normal. It's when the anxiety gets out of control, when it becomes disproportionate. When you start feeling anxious, even if there is no tiger in front of you, then clearly that is an abnormal state of mind. And a lot of the anxiety that we are seeing currently is related to two or three things. One is obviously the fear of getting COVID. And I think that the whole messaging around COVID has been so poor in many ways that instead of giving people some sense of control over it, it has resulted in too many anxieties. So there's this constant fear: have I got COVID? Many people have that. The other fear is, what about my family? Somebody in my family getting ill, and then the whole issue around how will I take them to the hospital, and all those concerns which are illness related. But one of the biggest fears that I find increasingly, and the anxieties underlying it, are to do with the financial situation, to do with, will I still have a job in 3 months' time? If I don't have a job, how am I going to pay my mortgage? How am I going to pay for my kids' school fees? So the anxieties around the economic situation and the anxieties around the health situation are broadly, if I were to classify it, two broad headings under which a lot of this anxiety is then clustered under. And depression, again, for the similar kind of reasons. And anxiety and depression, although are talked about as two separate conditions, tend to overlap and mix. It's very rare to find somebody who's only anxious and doesn't have depressive symptoms, and vice versa. But yeah, broadly, those are the two things that I would really put it down to.
Right, and your point is obviously important, that you should consult a doctor at the right time, and not too soon and not too late. But is there something I can do? I mean, is there an immunity that I could build? Is there some way I could fortify myself against, let's say, succumbing to anxiety or more anxiety?
Okay, I'm going to use a metaphor because sometimes people understand this easier if you make it metaphorical in a sense. So imagine if you had some kind of a physical health problem. Let's say you get up in the morning one day and you got a cough and a little bit of fever. You wouldn't rush to the doctor straight away. You wouldn't go to a chest physician and say, listen, I think I've got something wrong. What you would probably do is you'd say, maybe you'll ask your partner or somebody at home and you'll do some home remedies. For 1 or 2 days, you'll probably do some home remedies, stuff that your grandmother told you. And if that doesn't get better after 2 or 3 days, you might then go and see a doctor, like your family doctor, and say, listen, I've got this fever and cough for 2-3 days. Do you think I should do something? Frequently, the doctor might just write you some medicines or maybe even an antibiotic. And then if that still doesn't get better after 5 or 6 days, the doctor might say, why don't you go and have some tests done, get an X-ray. And if that shows something terrible, then he might say, go and see a chest physician. And I think we should follow the same process for mental health problems. So if you're getting some initial problems, the simplest things to do are self-care. There are lots of things that you can do to help yourself. Simple stuff like, maintain your daily routines, get up on time, sleep on time, exercise. A mild exercise helps. If you've got mild anxiety and depression, exercise is a great cure for it. So you could do these self-care things. Let's say the self-care stuff doesn't work and you think, I'm getting even more anxious. Maybe talk to someone in your family, call up a friend and have a chat with them. If that doesn't work still, maybe you can try calling up a helpline and have a chat with a counselor, and say, listen, this is what the problem is and it's not working. And maybe that doesn't work still, is probably at the point when you want to say, okay, maybe I should go and see a psychiatrist. So I think we need to have a graded response to it in the same way that you do with a physical health problem, that you do with so self-care. I think one of the things that all of us need to do, you and I included, is self-care. Looking after ourselves for our physical and mental health is extremely important, and there's a lot we can do to help ourselves. And I gave a couple of examples like exercise and sleep habits and getting up on time. And one of the things that I don't know, I'm quite happy that you're dressed for work. because one of the things that I've seen happening with this work from home, as happens even with me sometimes, and is you don't have a day which breaks up into work and you're off work. It just merges into work. So work from home has become more like live with work rather than work from home. And so I think it's important to keep those routines. Getting up on time, maybe getting dressed, having a place where you sit for work, and then shut down work at a certain time and have your other time doing things, and not just make life and work into one thing. So these are very practical, simple things that all of us could do. I could go on and on, but I'll stop.
Right. So, last question, Dr. Pathare. So, as we go ahead and we will emerge from COVID in some form or the other, what should we be doing in order to ensure that we stay focused on this and I mean mental health as an important issue, and how do we in some ways sensitize all of us and those around us to the problems and challenges that this condition can cause or bring?
Well, I think in a sense the COVID lockdown and the pandemic has really has sensitized people around it. So there's a lot of conversations that are happening. I think what really is now required is for those conversations to continue first, and secondly, for us to do some policy actions. And this is something that governments need to do, and maybe even organizations need to do. For example, putting services in place, bringing an openness in our conversation. So having, you see a lot of mental health related articles in media currently. Whether we are able to continue going forward is probably one of the most important things. And just generally, I think not allowing people to forget how it was during the pandemic, because it's very easy once this is over, we'll all get on with our lives and forget about it. But I'm hoping that there's been some fundamental shift in how people perceive it. So hopefully it'll last and it'll not just disappear off.
Right, that's a good note to end on. Hopefully, we will see more focus and convergence on this issue, even as we help those who need help, and those who need help also find it a conducive environment to speak freely and seek help and get it. Dr. Soumitra Pathare, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you so much.